Helljumpers, Chapter 21, Part 2. 1 month later, Scootaloo dropped out of the cryopod that had just opened. A month ago, they had left her through the portal at Voy with the elite rebel fleet. Beside her, she could hear Twilight flopping onto the ground as well. The Alicorn in the 2-month period before the Battle of Earth had figured out that cryo wouldn't hurt either pony, so they had opted to sit the ride out in cryo.
Ugh, I feel like crap,
the filly said as she got back onto her hooves. A general call went throughout the ship.
All crew report to your station in as short time as possible. Expect enemy contact the moment we exit subspace in 30 minutes.
Keys announced. Scootaloo walked over to the locker where she had stored her armor and started putting it back on, as it was going to be a long day.
You guys good?
She asked, as Mac and Lucy also exited cryo, with a bit more grace than either ponies. Never been better, Mac answered as he quickly donned his own armor. Scootaloo, meanwhile, was holding her helmet in her hooves. It was the only one that had been damaged by the energy sword. She had replaced the visor to restore its integrity, but it still very visibly showed the damage. Quickly putting the helmet on, she grabbed 2 SMGs and attached them to her sides. A flick of her wrist activated the energy dagger, which she deactivated again as she found it to be at full power.
I'll go ahead to the Pelican. See you guys in a bit,
Scootaloo said, as she walked down the hall into the lower hangar bay where she took a seat.
This should have been Zoe's seat. If I hadn't suggested flying that gunship, she would be here right now.
She was pulled from her thought as someone heavy stepped into the Pelican. Scootaloo looked behind her to see the chief walking up to the cockpit.
Sleep well, sir?
She asked, as she started her pre-flight checks. The Spartan didn't respond. Scootaloo took occasional glances at the Spartan, who just stared out of the cockpit.
Can I ask you something, sir?
She asked. The chief glanced at her and nodded.
Have you ever lost someone that you care about before?
She asked the Spartan. The Spartan looked at the pony for a couple of seconds. Yes, he simply said, as he turned and walked to the back of the Pelican. Scootaloo wanted to ask another question, but the other ODSTs, the Arbiter, Johnson, and a few Marines joined her on the dropship. 30 seconds to slipspace exit, the Sergeant Major announced. Scootaloo lit up the engine as Johnson stood behind her.
Here goes nothing,
Scootaloo said as she felt the ship drop out of slipspace. The hangar door opened beneath the Pelicans, revealing a massive 8-armed megastructure.
Truth's ship isn't taking part in the attack. He must have gone to ground,
Keyes told Johnson. Roger that, ma'am. We're on him. Kick the door. The Pelican, along with several others, dropped from the hangar bay of the stalwart Dawn. Around them, the 2 fleets started to clash as they fought for dominance. One of the Pelicans next to her exploded, as it was hit by flak from an enemy vessel. Scootaloo cursed as she passed the burning wreck and made it out of the range of the flak. We good, Hurricane? Johnson asked, and Scootaloo quickly checked the status on all systems.
She's a little cooked, Sergeant Major, but she'll hold.
Behind her, the Chief and Arbiter stood at the ready with a sniper rifle and beam rifle, respectively. Alright, pop the hatch, Johnson ordered. 2 button pushes later, the ramp at the back of the dropship opened.
That's some view,
Twilight commented as she got her first view of the megastructure. Enjoy it while you can, Sparkle. Soon we land, we're right back to it. Priority 1, secure a landing zone for the Commander's frigate. Keep your eyes and ears open. We need all the intel we can get, on wherever the hell we are. Hocus, the co-pilot, took control of the craft, as Scootaloo followed the rest of the troops out of the Pelican. Go, go, go! Johnson shouted, as he ushered everyone out of the Pelican. Scootaloo and Mac pushed ahead to scout out possible paths for the Chief to take. Traveling through similar structures like those on Halo, they eventually came upon a group of enemies. They took up firing positions on a ledge as Lucy, Chief, and the Arbiter came running towards them. Chief, eyes on, Mac said as he pointed at the squad of brutes supported by jackals and grunts. You take the first shot, Mac said as he had lined up his rifle. The moment the Chief opened fire, a hail of bullets descended on the enemy position, downing them with relative ease. As all the Covenant Loyalist forces were down, Twilight came gliding down from a short flight that she had taken.
There's an AA turret being constructed on the other side of the hill,
she reported to the Chief.
The cave down there should lead you to it.
The squad split up as the Chief, Arbiter, Mac, and Lucy went into the cave, while Scootaloo and Twilight flew up the hill to attack from above. Twilight glanced at the crouched Pegasus as they landed on top of the hill. Scootaloo had painted her armor entirely black, and the visor that she had replaced the damaged one with was a dark shade of blue instead of the former orange one.
Ready for assault on your mark, Chief,
she radioed to the Spartan. Copy that, Hurricane. Mark, he immediately answered. Twilight immediately pulled the trigger on her sniper rifle and took out a Jackal sniper. The Covenant Loyalists immediately dropped the work that they were doing on the turret and tried to get into defensive positions.
How's the magic here, Twi?
Scootaloo asked the Alicorn, who was picking brutes off one by one.
Terrible. It's a bit better than Earth, but I recommend not trying to fry anything with lightning,
she answered, sensing the Pegasus's intention.
Copy that. See you in a bit,
she answered and took to the sky, using the sun as cover as she dropped from the sky onto an unsuspecting jackal who was firing potshots at Lucy from his cover. Not even bothering using the energy dagger, she smashed down onto his spine, and a gruesome crack later was lying motionlessly onto the ground. She suddenly heard the whine of a phantom as one of the dropships delivered 2 hunters. "Focus fire on the hunters," Chief ordered. Scootaloo aimed one of her SMGs and put a burst into the back of one of the hunters. The armored Hulk immediately turned around, but to its peril, this gave Twilight the opportunity to fire a round into its back. It didn't go down immediately, but that was soon rectified as the Arbiter put a lance of hot plasma into the alien. Its mate roared with anger as its colony mate was killed and fired a plasma blast at Lucy. Scootaloo saw the ODST duck behind cover, but the plasma seemed to burn it away.
Lucy!
Scootaloo shouted as she charged towards the hunter. The hunter took a swipe at her, but missed. Behind the rock where Lucy had taken cover, she found to her relief the ODST with a partially melted shoulder plate.
I'm good, Hurricane, I'm good. Now go get the fucker,
she said as she injected biofoam into a slot on her upper arm. Behind her, explosions went off as the chief was lobbing plasma grenades onto the vulnerable spots on the hunter's body. The individual worms that made up the large alien either burnt off or were being ripped to shreds as Twilight fired one of the sniper rounds into it.
Chief, I'm giving the brutes all I've got, but this is a heavyweight fight. The Dawn's only got a tonnage to last a few rounds. Find me a place to set her down, over.
Keyes ordered, as the second hunter collapsed. Roger that. Sierra 117 out. The chief answered, as he ran into a cave that contained an old structure and out of it on the other side. A longsword bomber pilot called out Mayday as the burning craft flew by. An explosion followed shortly after. Flat got a Pelican too, sir. But before we went down, we spotted a good LZ. If we can get to our vehicles, we'll lead you to it, a Marine stated as he pointed to where a Pelican had crashed into the ground. After a short fight, they had cleared the crash site of brutes and grunts. The chief picked up a rocket launcher and continued. Not a moment later, 2 brute vehicles came charging to the squad, but with 2 well-placed shots with high-explosive rockets, the brutes never got a chance to fire on the Marines. After mounting the remaining brute vehicles, the group went on to find a suitable landing place for the forward onto Dawn. Fighting their way through a canyon, killing a couple more loyalist vehicles along the way, they found another structure that had a couple of sentinels flying around. Ma'am, Hocus almost got her wing shot off, but we spotted a structure on the other side of this wall. It matches Cortana's description of the map room on the first Halo ring, Johnson reported.
A cartographer. Good. Should help us fix Truth's location. Secure the LZ, and we'll push through that wall,
the captain ordered. Roger that. Follow my Pelican, Chief. The LZ's this way, Johnson replied as his Pelican flew overhead. The group continued on foot as the Sentinels continued to follow them, but other than that, they did nothing of significance. The LZ's through this cave, sir. Watch yourself, they've got Covenant heavy armor, a Marine said as the chief reached the entrance of the first cave. On the other side, they could see 2 anti-air wraiths along a regular one with infantry supporting them.
Arbiter, pass me a grenade,
Scootaloo said as she took to the air. The Arbiter threw a plasma grenade into the filly's hooves before she shot up into the air and moments later crashed down onto the hatch of the purple tank, lobbing it into the driver's compartment. The wraith started to shudder before plasma vented from the hatch. Scootaloo managed to somehow drag the corpse of the brute out of the driver's seat and get in herself. The Chief and Arbiter, meanwhile, had focused on the 2 anti-air wraiths while the rest of the Marines and ODSTs were taking out all the support infantry. The Chief, similarly to Scootaloo, managed to lob a grenade into the cockpit of the craft, but the Arbiter had less luck and got thrown off before he could use his grenade. The Wraith, not wasting any time, lit up his boosters to attempt to ram the elite.
Oh, like hell you will,
Scootaloo thought as she fired the main turret of the Wraith that she had captured at the AA-1. The large blow of the plasma immediately melted through the outer shell of the craft, shorting out its anti-gravity system, making it come to a screeching halt in front of the Arbiter. That did it! LZ's clear, Johnson reported to the captain. A couple of seconds later, they could see a gray dot rapidly growing as the frigate descended to the surface. The Dawn fired its retrograde thrusters to slow down and eventually set down onto the surface.
Thanks, Chief. I wouldn't have lasted much longer up there. Come to the back of the frigate,
Keyes said as the Dawn's engines shut down. Out back, the hangar had opened up, revealing 3 Scorpion tanks and a Warthog.
Oh, now that's what I'm talking about,
Scootaloo said as she had ditched the Wraith.
Johnson, did the elites get a fix on the cartographer?
Keyes asked the Sergeant Major. Yes, ma'am. Just on the other side of that wall, but it's surrounded by brute heavy armor, he replied.
Don't worry, I've got a plan. If we can't fly over the wall, we'll go right through it. Chief, take one of the tanks, lead the way. If you find any locked doors, Sparkle will be happy to pry them open.
She finished, the Monitor joining them down at the tanks.
I will certainly try my best, though I am unfamiliar with this facility,
it said. Continuing on with the overwhelming firepower of the 3 tanks, they made quick and good progress towards the cartographer. A couple more Warthogs joined up with the group as they continued to fight on against heavy resistance. After another 15 minutes of intense fighting, they finally reached their destination. Suddenly, they heard heavy thumps as they dismounted their vehicles. Some of the Marines tried to identify where the sounds came from, but Scootaloo knew full well what it was.
Scarab!
she shouted, as she left the gunner seat of the Warthog and flew up into the air. Twilight, for once, was close on her tail.
Pass me one of those SMGs!
She shouted to the filly, who tossed one over with a couple of mags. Twilight swiftly caught them in her magic and attached them to her armor as the scarab came into view of the tanks.
So what's the plan? You've done this before!
She asked Scootaloo, who angled herself to land on the walker.
There's an energy core in the back. 2 grenades is all it takes to kill this thing.
She answered as she landed along with Twilight, and they quickly killed the grunts occupying the top of the craft.
Go on, I've got your back.
Twilight told the filly as they made their way down to the scarab. Scootaloo cut down a few brutes with her energy blade, while Twilight alternated between the SMG and her sniper. At the back of the scarab, Scootaloo stuck 2 plasma grenades to the energy core and jumped off before the large craft exploded in a bright flash.
Not bad, Hurricane. I saw that explosion from orbit. Truth's fleet lies in ruins. Find where the liar hides, so I may place my boot between his gums.
Artas Vidum said as he observed the ground progress from the Shadow of Intent.
We'll know soon enough, Shipmaster.
Keyes answered as Scootaloo followed the chief with the other ODSTs and the Arbiter. They found the Monitor trying to unlock a door on the upper level.
Hey, what gives?
A Marine asked as sparks came from the door.
It seems I've crossed the circuit.
He answers as he continues working. The Marine stepped forward, intent to help.
Well, let me have a look.
The machine quickly turned and shot a blue laser at the Marine, making him yelp and stumble back.
Oracle!
The Arbiter said with his rifle at the ready.
Little bastard stung me!
The Marine said.
I did not want you to come to any harm.
The Monitor said as he returned back to work.
You got a funny way of showing it.
The Marine muttered as the door sprung open.
Excellent. This way.
The Monitor said as it took lead. The group stumbled upon a group of sleeping grunts and a brute that was urinating in the corner of the room. The chief snuck up to the brute and severed its spine with his combat knife, while the others were silently taking out the grunts. The group continued to take out small pockets of enemies as they moved through the hallways of the structure. Eventually, after clearing a larger room, the Monitor spoke up again.
Your goal is just ahead,
it happily said as the group moved through a final hallway into a large room.
The cartographer! Come, it awaits your approval.
The Monitor told the chief, who placed his hand on a scanner which activated the machine. A large projection of the Milky Way appeared in front of them.
That's our galaxy. We're beyond the rim,
the chief said, surprised.
2 to the 18th light years from galactic center, to be precise.
The Monitor confirmed. Twilight stepped up next to the chief.
Spark, can you pull up Earth's location?
She asked, and the hologram zoomed in on the Orion's arm.
This is the location of Air Tyrene, as you asked, but I fail to see the relevance to our current situation.
Twilight waved him off as she looked at the hologram.
Now can you show me my homeworld's relative to Earth? Miss Sparkle, I must insist—
Guilty Spark started, but was stopped by the Arbiter.
Please do as the pony asks, Oracle.
The hologram zoomed out of it and showed a second dot with a line and a set of coordinates. Twilight let out a crazed laugh as she pulled out a notebook and a pen from beneath her armor.
These are slip space coordinates!
The Monitor seemed confused.
Yes, of course they are,
he said, but he didn't inquire further and changed the hologram to the megastructure that they were currently on. Scootaloo ignored the rest of the conversation as the Chief and Guilty Spark started playing 20 questions with each other.
Twilight?
Scootaloo asked the Alicorn as Twilight placed her helmet beside her and was writing down calculations.
Twilight!
She repeated, but still didn't get a reply.
Twilight!
She shouted, finally getting the attention of the princess.
Ah, we found it!
Twilight said with a manic smile, a couple of hairs springing up. Scootaloo rolled her eyes and hit her with a right hook.
Focus, Twilight! We still need to get out of here alive, and that's something that might be much harder than we think right now.
Twilight restored her mane and safely put her notebook away.
Sorry, you're right,
Phantom!
Max shouted, pulling everyone's attention to the sky. They all jumped to cover as the dropship started firing on their positions and dropped off enemy units before flying off again.
Chief, you got a whole mess of hostile air inbound. Get back inside while we take them out.
Johnson called in via the radio. A Banshee started to make an attack run on the Arbiter, but the Elite evaded its fire and somehow managed to board it, killing the brute pilot. Scootaloo saw another Banshee approaching and also took to the air, her small frame allowing her to get behind the craft and emptying her SMG into the pilot, capturing the second aircraft.
Follow the Oracle, Spartan. I will help your sergeant clear the sky,
the Arbiter told the others over the radio, as Scootaloo fell in formation behind him.
I've got your back, Arbiter!
Scootaloo reported as she reminded herself how to use the Covenant flight controls. She could see Twilight, Mac, and Lucy follow the Chief as they started to make their way to the extraction point. An enemy Banshee came up on the Arbiter's back and opened fire.
I've got him!
Scootaloo simply stated as she pointed her craft and fired the plasma cannons. A purple fireball barreled past the two Banshees as they continued to the Pelicans in the distance.
Phantom headed for the extraction point,
the Arbiter said as he made a hard turn right while Scootaloo followed him closely. The Pegasus switched from the plasma cannons to the much bigger plasma launcher and took aim at the Phantom alongside the Arbiter. The moment the dropship came into range, they both fired their weapons. Green plasma slowly arched towards the craft before hitting it and melting away one of the gravity engines, making it lose altitude rapidly.
Thanks for the help, you two. Hurricane, form up on me.
Johnson said as his Pelican made a beeline for the extraction point. Scootaloo could see the Chief fighting a pack of brutes at the extraction point, one with a gravity hammer getting incredibly close to getting a clean hit. As the Spartan rolled out of the way, the brute spotted Twilight, who was firing her sniper at various targets, and started charging her with his hammer.
Oh, shit! No.
Scootaloo switched weapons again and opened fire on the brute with her plasma cannons, but those did a little more than make the brute's shields flare. Twilight, meanwhile, had noticed the chieftain and opened fire, but it definitely seemed like the alien was going to reach the alicorn.
Oh no, you don't, not now. We've gotten this far.
She thought as she activated the boost at the Banshee and immediately ditched the ship. After that, the 2-ton craft hit the brute at full speed, squashing him like a bug.
Twilight, you okay?
She immediately asked the alicorn, who had jumped out of the way before the Banshee just hit the ground.
Oh, I'm good,
she said as the chief finished the last brute and walked to the edge of the platform that they were on. The Arbiter had also ditched his Banshee and joined the group. And then suddenly, a large flock of sentinels appeared from below and everyone raised their weapons at them.
Commander?
The chief said in alarm.
I got it,
Johnson said while the turret's barrel started spinning.
No, don't shoot. They mean us no harm. Those units have a priority task.
Guilty Spark interrupted, the Sergeant Major clearly being annoyed at this.
Oh yeah? And what might that be?
He asked.
I really can't say, not for sure. But if you'll allow me to find a terminal closer to the core...
The Monitor rambled, but was interrupted by the Arbiter.
No, Oracle. We must keep the Prophet of Truth firmly in our sights.
The Monitor seemed to be taken aback by that.
But what about your construct? Her solution to the flood? With more data,
Guilty Spark was interrupted again, but this time by Captain Keyes.
The Arbiter's right. We have priorities too. Until we kill Truth, stop the rings from firing,
she said, as everyone jumped into the Pelican, which immediately started to fly away with 3 others.
Nothing else matters.
I don't know if you think the same way, but the Ark is one of the greatest missions on Halo 3 because of the length, the vehicles, everything about it is just so enjoyable. And as always, with the way the CommanderApplejack integrates ponies into it, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now let's get on to our truly advanced donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Magazine, CrazyKiller557, dospo, Madman Stann, Delta Omega, Jack Hedge, RuneScyther9852, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, McDoofus456, Dash of Evergreen, Ronnie Dragonwolf, Ponyman, Tal Rasha, The Toilet Snake, Sword Brethren Mordred, Ronin Wandering, Random Person Man Guy, Easy, Skyochia, Leslie Prickett, Jordan Peterson, Crimson Kitten A9, Lightskin, Monster Kitty, Needs a Life, Milan Biehanek, and many more superior people. Thank you all very much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.